Hello, everyone. My name is Deepti Mahajan, and I'm a research engineer working for Ford at our Greenfield Labs office in Palo Alto. I primarily work on perception and deep learning for driver assist features. I first became interested in the topic of bias through my work in AI. While working on training neural networks, I've come across the concept of a biased dataset. This can cause a lot of issues when training a neural network, because any biases that may exist in the training data are learned by the network, leading to biased and hence inaccurate predictions. Sometimes the existence of bias is obvious in datasets. You can plot the distribution of the data and it's immediately visible. Other times it's not so clear and requires more in-depth analysis. Today, I'll be talking about the way that bias manifests itself in the world around us and how this disproportionately affects certain demographics, specifically women. I'll start off with the example of unpaid labor. Unpaid labor is work that does not receive direct compensation. Generally, this consists of household work, taking care of elderly relatives, and taking care of children. In certain countries, this could also involve activities like fetching water and growing food. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, women do 75% of the world's unpaid work. In fact, McKinsey estimates $10 trillion of global annual GDP comes from women's unpaid care work. In order to complete this work, travel is essential. A typical travel pattern for unpaid care work consists of several small interconnected trips. For example, you might drop off your children at school before going to work, or pick up groceries on the way home from taking a relative to the doctor. This is called trip chaining. This differs from trips made for unpaid work, which is usually a twice daily commute in and out of town. When we look at the way cities are designed, however, it appears as though trips made for paid work are valued more than trips made for unpaid care work. Most cities' public transportation systems have radial designs, which means that the majority of transportation routes lead to a single downtown area. While this is useful for commuters, this design is not as useful for other travel patterns, such as trip chaining and traveling from one neighborhood to another. And this simply exacerbates the amount of time spent on unpaid labor. While this egregious disadvantage may seem intentional, it is most likely due to an oversight and a reliance on antiquated ways of thinking. However, in maintaining radial transportation routes, cities unknowingly propagate the prioritization of men's needs over women's. In her book, Invisible Women, Caroline Criado Perez discusses these examples and describes this as a data gap that leads to hidden bias in the systems around us. While the example of city planning causes inconvenience and increases the amount of unpaid labor that women often do, there are other examples that lead to more serious consequences, one of which involves automotive safety. Women drivers involved in car crashes are 47% more likely to be seriously injured than a man, and 71% more likely to be moderately injured. Even when factors like height, weight, seatbelt usage, and crash intensity are controlled for, she is 17% more likely to die based on statistics from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. This is because crash test dummies have been modeled after the 50th percentile male for decades. Women are, on average, shorter than men. This means that women tend to sit further forward than men, which is not the standard seating position. It wasn't until 2011 that the US started to use a female crash test dummy for some vehicular safety tests. Even then, the dummy modeled the stature of a 5th percentile woman, and the test placed the female dummy in the front passenger seat and not the driver's seat. In addition, it is unclear whether the dummy takes differences in female anatomy into account, since in the EU, the regulatory test involving a female dummy is just a scaled down male dummy. Now, these examples are centered around systems regulated by government agencies. While we can spread awareness about these things, most of us don't have a direct impact over governmental policies. We can, however, take a look at our own experiences through this lens. I actually found that the data gap leading to hidden bias concept exists in my own thought patterns. I've been a woman in engineering since my first day in programming class as a college freshman. I remember that almost half of my classmates were women at that point, but as I progressed in my degree, my electrical engineering classes got smaller and smaller, and so did the percentage of women. In one course, I counted 5 women in a class of 50. Despite this, while I sympathized with those advocating for mentorship and outreach programs for women in tech, I felt that I had personally never experienced discrimination in my courses or work experiences. Sure, I wasn't the most assertive person in the classroom or workplace, but I attributed that solely to my personal anxieties and perfectionist tendencies. I thought that I had no choice but to adapt to the world of tech that surrounded me. When I joined the automated driving team at Ford Greenfield Labs, I walked into a team that was about 40% women, with a female lab director at the helm. Even more unique than the gender balance was the team's culture. Everyone was open to collaboration, and I found myself working with smart women who made a point of supporting me and my ideas. They took my opinions seriously, celebrated my achievements with me, and most importantly, encouraged me whenever my self-doubt kicked in. My preconceived notions of what I could achieve had started to shift as a result. Since I had rarely been a part of a supportive community of technically minded women, I had subconsciously formed a false belief about my own capabilities, which was revealed due to this novel experience. I soon discovered some more hidden biases within myself when our campus held an innovation challenge last year. Thanks to the championing of our lab director, the innovation challenge focused on creating mobility-related products or services, specifically to fill women's needs. Employees from all across our office joined forces to brainstorm ways in which to use vehicle-related technology to improve the lives of women. Now, this was far from perfect in terms of scientific data collection and needs assessment, but even this brief thought exercise of considering women's needs brought about a variety of novel project ideas. Some of the notable ones included using sensors on the vehicle to ensure the safety of its owner even when they're outside the vehicle, integrating the ability to easily trip chain into a navigation app, and providing simpler mobility options for seniors making trips to the doctor. And this is where the solution to the hidden bias problem lies. Since the bias in the systems around us have arisen from data gaps, we can expose and eliminate them by gathering data, and more importantly, ensuring that all voices are represented in the data. Sometimes this comes about when women are in leadership positions. We can see this in Barcelona, which is a city that historically had a radial public transportation system. In 2013, the Barcelona City Council started a data-driven smart city initiative and found that the orthogonal bus routes are imperative for accessible and efficient mobility. The current and also first female mayor of Barcelona, Ada Colau, is prioritizing the development of city solutions that serve its residents well, and has expanded upon the city's new orthogonal bus routes. These bus routes guarantee that 95% of the population has a high-speed bus service less than 300 meters from home, and that 90% of the journeys can be done with a single route change. But even those of us who are not in governmental leadership positions hold a lot of power. My experiences working in an environment with female leaders and participating in the ideation process of the Innovation Challenge has affected my thinking significantly. Instead of accepting and adjusting to existing systems and societal beliefs, we, as engineers, scientists, designers, and business people, have the power to design and create new technologies, services, and infrastructures that are bias-free and truly serve everyone. Specifically in the mobility space, the products we develop have widespread impact. I urge you to consider the following questions. Do the design decisions being made in your own industry or company rely on outdated statistics or assumptions about a default user? Are AI-based systems trained and tested on truly representative data? Has this data been disaggregated by sex and other often underrepresented demographics? And do you have a clear picture of who your product or services users are? Are the needs of these users based on assumptions or historical data? Perhaps we need to go back to basics and collect data about the needs of our communities without any preconceived notions. Perhaps we are only serving a specific type of consumer and thus failing to improve others' lives and even missing out on business opportunities. By taking a closer look at potential data gaps and collecting more data accordingly, we can uncover hidden bias in the systems around us, the products we are building, and even our own thought patterns. I truly believe that if we put in the effort to identify hidden bias, we can collectively overcome it. Thank you so much for listening.